everything you need to know about Islam in one video. Today, you may have witnessed a rather unusual scene. At the center of a vast square stands a towering black cube. Around it, countless Muslim devotees clad in white robes swirl like a boundless white ocean, forming circles that ripple like waves in the sea. This black cube, in Arabic, is called the Kaaba, meaning the square house. It is also known as the heaven, or the three holy sanctuaries. The Kaaba, located in Mecca, the holy city of Islam, is regarded as the earthly abode of Allah. Every year, millions of Muslims from all over the world make the pilgrimage here. Although tragic stampedes have occurred several times, the longing of the faithful to reach this sacred site has never waned. The pilgrimage to Mecca is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Every adult Muslim, if financially and physically able, is required to undertake it at least once in their lifetime. So, what secret does the Kaaba in Mecca hold that makes this event one of the greatest religious phenomena and also one of the most lucrative in the world? Why does the practice of child marriage still persist in some Islamic communities, and what has linked Islam with modern terrorism? Indeed, let us now explore the mysteries behind all these questions. Mecca is situated in West Arabia, amid ancient mountains and approximately 80 kilometers from the Red Sea. Since ancient times, it has been an important hub on the trade routes. Here is a satellite image of the city of Mecca, set amidst golden sands. The pristine white structures belong to the Great Mosque of Mecca, one of the world's most magnificent architectural wonders, covering an area of up to 356,000 square. It is the largest sacred site in Islam and also one of the most expensive constructions in the Red Land. After numerous expansions, its cost has approached $1 trillion, comparable to building 66 Burj Khalifa towers in Dubai. Every wall, dome, staircase, and corridor in the Great Mosque is paved with white marble that glistens under the sun, creating a majestic and awe-inspiring appearance. When night falls, thousands of mercury lights illuminate the area. By day, the place shines as brightly as if it were noon, imparting an extraordinarily solemn atmosphere. The Great Mosque of Mecca is also known as the Sacred Sanctuary, a place where, according to the Quran, all acts of violence, murder, theft, or conflict are strictly forbidden. Moreover, this land is off-limits to non-Muslims. Along the highway leading into Mecca, you will find a gateway designed like an open Quran scroll, marking the beginning of this forbidden zone. From that point on, only Muslims are allowed to proceed. Road signs clearly indicate routes reserved for Muslims, not for non-believers. According to Saudi Arabian tourism regulations, foreigners are not permitted to enter Mecca or Medina. Along the main routes near these holy sites, checkpoints staffed by religious police ensure that any non-Muslim trespassers are arrested, prosecuted, and immediately expelled. Islam has 3 major holy sites: Mecca, the birthplace of Prophet Muhammad; Medina, the place where the first Islamic state was established; and Jerusalem, the site of Prophet Muhammad's miraculous night journey. The pilgrimage to Mecca began more than 1940 years ago, with the first pilgrimage led by Prophet Muhammad in 632. Muhammad led a group of 100,000 devotees from Medina to Mecca to perform the pilgrimage. Upon arriving in Mecca, he guided them to circle the Kaaba, the cube, 7 times, to kiss the sacred black stone, and to pray at the spot where Prophet Ibrahim once stood and drank from the holy well. Then, he led them to run 7 times between the 2 hills of Safa and Marwa, before spending the night in the valley of Mina, about 15 kilometers from Mecca. The next morning, the group reached Mount Arafat, also known as the Mountain of Forgiveness, where they recited prayers, gathered together, and repented. After leaving Mount Arafat, they spent the night at Mudara, where they prayed and collected stones. The following morning in Mina, the pilgrims performed the ritual of stoning the devil, throwing small stones at 3 stone pillars symbolizing Satan. Afterwards, they sacrificed an animal and distributed the meat to the poor. Finally, Muhammad led them back to Mecca, circling the Kaaba 7 more times to complete the entire ritual. It is noteworthy that the pilgrimage is not only meant to commemorate Prophet Muhammad, but also to remember the trial that Allah once imposed on the family of Prophet Ibrahim. Who was Ibrahim, and what do the rituals of the Mecca pilgrimage symbolize? What truly lies behind the concept of the miraculous night? Let us now turn back more than 1400 years to explore the origins of the earliest Islam. The origins and message of Islam. Islam, from the Arabic Islam, whose followers are called Muslims, is one of the three major religions in the world, alongside Buddhism and Christianity. In terms of numbers, Islam ranks second with about 1.8 billion adherents, accounting for 24% of the global population. According to a 2015 Pew Research Center study, in a previous video, I mentioned that the vast majority of Muslims are peaceful and peace-loving, though I received significant criticism for that remark. However, I ask, if all 1.8 billion Muslims were terrorists, could we be living in peace today? Islam is divided into two main branches, Shia and Sunni. The Sunni branch accounts for about 80% of Muslims worldwide. The biggest difference between the two lies in their view of Prophet Muhammad's successor. The Shia believe that the caliph, the legitimate successor of the Prophet, must be inherited through his family line, whereas the Sunnis maintain that the caliph should be chosen based on merit. This disagreement has led to religious conflicts spanning 1400 years. Terrorist organizations like the Islamic State originate from the Sunni branch, but they represent an extremely small fraction and do not stand for the broader Sunni community. The dangerous extremist elements claim that jihad is a sacred and glorious mission that will grant them immense rewards in heaven. For example, chapter 4, verse 74 of the Quran states, "Whoever fights in the cause of Allah, whether he is killed or victorious, will receive an honorable reward from him." In chapter 52, it is mentioned that those who fear Allah will be granted rewards in paradise and be accompanied by beautiful maidens. The texts even suggest that the smallest reward in heaven is a palace with 80,000 slaves and 72 wives, making paradise seem rather enticing. Previously, we discussed how Christianity emerged from Judaism and how Islam, in turn, has roots connected to Christianity. However, this time we will focus on the story of Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam. Muhammad was born around 570 in Mecca into the Hashemite family of the Quraysh tribe, a family renowned for its trade. His father died before he was born, and his mother passed away when he was 16. He was then raised by his grandfather, but soon after, his grandfather also died. Muhammad was taken in by his uncle. Although he received little formal education and was illiterate, he learned through his trading journeys with his uncle, traveling through Syria, Palestine, and other lands, broadening his horizons and coming into contact with major religions such as Judaism and Christianity. His upright character earned him respect, and he was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. One story recounts that Muhammad once waited for a merchant friend for 3 days at an agreed meeting spot, even though the friend had forgotten the appointment. And when the friend finally arrived, Muhammad gently said, "Young man, I have been waiting for you here for 3 days." At the time of Muhammad's birth, the Arabian Peninsula was undergoing major upheavals. Much of the region was desert, barren, and impoverished, where many led a nomadic life in search of water and grazing lands. However, its geographical location was extremely important, serving as a crossroads for trade between the East and West and becoming a coveted territory for great empires. From the latter half of the 6th century, the Byzantine and Sassanid empires continuously clashed to control this land. The prolonged wars disrupted traditional trade routes through the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and the Tigris River. As a result, merchants were forced to switch to safer routes that passed through the western Arabian Peninsula from Syria to Yemen, and then from Yemen, goods were transported across the Indian Ocean. Mecca, Muhammad's hometown, greatly benefited from this change, as it lay at the center of the route linking the Persian Gulf, east the Red Sea, Syria to the west, the north, and Yemen to the south. Thus, Mecca became more prosperous and bustling than ever before. In 595, when Muhammad was 25, during a trading journey, he met a wealthy businesswoman, 15 years his senior, named Khadija. Attracted by his intelligence and talent, Khadija quickly married him. This marriage marked a major turning point in Muhammad's life. Although he had not inherited any wealth from his father or grandfather, he became prosperous thanks to Khadija's resources. The couple lived happily together and had 7 children, maintaining a monogamous relationship until Khadija passed away in 619. After her death, Muhammad married several other women, totaling 11 wives and many concubines. Among them was his third wife, Aisha, whom he loved the most, yet who also became the center of much controversy because she was engaged to him at 16 and married at the age of 9. This in part explains why the practice of child marriage still persists in some Islamic communities, for Muhammad himself once did so. After marrying Khadija, freed from financial worries, Muhammad had more time to contemplate life. It was during this period that Islam began to take shape, as legend has it. In 610, when he was 40, while meditating in the cave of Hira near Mecca, the angel Gabriel, appeared to him and conveyed the first truths of the Quran. He was informed that he was the final prophet, sent to earth by Allah with the mission of transmitting his revelations. The Quran, the most important holy book of Islam, is considered the direct word of Allah. Since Muhammad was illiterate, his teachings were recorded by his followers and compiled into the Quran. Its content includes not only stories of creation, the end of the world, and earlier prophets, but also establishes clear regulations regarding economic and social activities. Unlike some other religions, Islam does not advocate asceticism. While it emphasizes the afterlife, it does not neglect worldly life. On the contrary, Islam encourages its followers to enjoy the material blessings bestowed by Allah, such as family, abundant harvests, and livestock, while teaching that eternal happiness in the hereafter depends not on one's wealth, but on maintaining faith and obeying divine law. In a sense, the Quran is built upon a system of commerce and society based on trustworthiness and the proper fulfillment of contracts. Drawing on his extensive experience in trade, Muhammad understood that re-establishing social order on the basis of faith would be more effective than persuading the Arabs solely through royal decree. Although constructing a new mythological system from scratch was no easy task, Muhammad cleverly built Islam on the foundations of both Judaism and Christianity. The greatest difference between Muhammad and Jesus Christ in Christianity is that Muhammad always emphasized that he was not divine. He was merely a messenger, a prophet sent by Allah to deliver his message. He called on people to abandon the worship of multiple gods and idols and to worship only Allah. For this reason, among the 3 major world religions, only Islam does not depict Allah or Prophet Muhammad in any images, since Islam opposes idol worship and strictly forbids creating representations of Allah or the prophets to preserve purity and prevent the veneration of human figures that might overshadow Allah's supremacy. Islam acknowledges many prophets, but Muhammad holds a unique position as the final prophet, bearing the title Seal of the Prophets. This definitively ended any possibility of someone thereafter claiming to be a prophet within Islam. Before Muhammad, there were prophets such as Adam, Noah, Ibrahim, Musa, and Isa, names that appear in both the Quran and the Bible. Although these comparisons serve only to aid understanding, the Quran and the Bible share many similarities. For instance, in the Bible, Adam is the first being created by God, and in the Quran, Adam is likewise the first human created by Allah. Eve in the Bible and Hawa in the Quran were both created from one of Adam's ribs. In the Bible, Abraham is the father of faith, while in the Quran, Ibrahim is called the guide of humanity. Ibrahim's eldest son, Ismail, is the ancestor of the Arabs, whereas his second son, Isaac, corresponds to the biblical Isaac and is considered the forefather of the Jews. Yet there are many differences too. For example, in the Quran, Isa is not regarded as the son of God, but as one of the prophets. He was not crucified, but rather was raised to heaven by Allah. And Islam asserts that Allah does not require any sacrifice to atone for human sins, only sincere repentance and self-restraint. Allah's door of forgiveness is always open. Muslims believe that no sacrifice or violence is necessary for salvation. Returning to Muhammad's story, in 610, at the age of 40, he could never have imagined that his time in the cave of Hira would lay the foundation for the eventual unification of the Arabian Peninsula. After receiving revelations from Allah in the cave, he recounted his experience to those around him. Most people thought he was mad, but a few chose to believe him. Over time, his number of followers grew, especially among young merchants. The Quran holds merchants in high esteem. Muhammad once said, "Merchants are the envoys of the world. They are the ones Allah trusts upon earth." Thus, from its very inception, Islam was born out of trade and served commerce. However, as Muhammad's power and that of his followers grew, they came into conflict with the interests of the Meccan aristocracy and the polytheists. At that time, the Kaaba was still a site for the worship of over 360 idols of the old polytheistic religion. The Meccan elites exploited this idol worship for enormous profit, and the monotheistic creed of Islam clearly disrupted their money-making system. Consequently, the early Muslims suffered severe persecution amid these harsh realities. Some regarded it as a test from Allah, while many felt confused and alarmed as their faith began to falter. Muhammad performed a miracle known as the miraculous night, as described in the Quran. On the 27th night of the Islamic month of Rajab in 621, the angel Jibril was sent by Allah to Mecca, arriving with the mythical creature Burak to transport Muhammad on its back. Under the guidance of this celestial being, Muhammad embarked on his miraculous journey. In the blink of an eye, he was transported to Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, the beginning of what is known as the night journey, Isra. From Al-Aqsa, he rode Burak and ascended through the seven heavens, meeting earlier prophets such as Musa, witnessing both paradise and hell, and ultimately encountering Allah, who declared, "If the believers pray sincerely every day, I will lead them out of darkness and into the light of dawn." After this ascension, Miraj, Muhammad returned to Mecca, his journey having reinforced the faith of his followers and helping Islam overcome its early crises. In 622, facing assassination plots from the Meccan elites, Muhammad and his followers migrated to Medina, about 320 kilometers from Mecca. Medina, freshly scarred by internal strife and yearning for a leader to bring peace, welcomed Muhammad as a savior. From then on, it became the first stronghold of the Islamic community. The expansion of the Islamic State. However, the Meccan elites relentlessly opposed the spread of Islam. In 625, with a force of 3,000, they attacked Medina. Muhammad led 1,000 followers into battle at Badr. Although the battle ended inconclusively, the Muslims suffered heavy losses with over 70 martyrs, and Muhammad himself was injured in 627. 2 years later, the Meccan aristocrats, supported by certain Jewish tribes, assembled an army of over 10,000 to besiege Medina. After a month of steadfast defense, the Muslim forces finally repelled their foes. Yet Muhammad realized that to protect his community and strengthen their power, he must conquer the tribes surrounding Medina. In 628, he launched military campaigns against Jewish tribes, such as at Khaybar, and expanded Islam's influence into Palestine and Syria. In 630, Muhammad led an army of more than 10,000 into Mecca. The Meccans quickly disbanded in the face of overwhelming force, and Mecca submitted without resistance. The Muslim army entered Mecca with little opposition. Once there, Muhammad executed only a few extremist opponents, and along with his followers, removed over 360 idols from the Kaaba, transforming it into a holy sanctuary of Islam. Within 10 years of migrating to Medina, Muhammad conducted 65 military campaigns, personally commanding 27 of them, which ignited a religious revolution across the Arabian Peninsula. In 632, Muhammad had unified nearly the entire peninsula. He proved himself not only as a prophet, but also as an outstanding military leader. That same year, he led a large group of followers on the first pilgrimage to Mecca, the inaugural Hajj reserved solely for Muslims. He declared that the pilgrimage to Mecca is a mandatory religious duty for every believer at least once in their lifetime. The pilgrimage to Mecca commemorates the trial that Allah imposed on Prophet Ibrahim and his family long ago. Ibrahim and his wife Sarah longed for a child, but Allah had not promised them a son. Only much later did Sarah give birth to Isaac. Earlier, following Sarah's advice, Ibrahim married Hagar, Sarah's maid, and she bore Ishmael. However, conflict between Sarah and Hagar forced Ibrahim to send Hagar and Ishmael to a desolate valley. In her desperate search for water to save her son, Hagar ran back and forth between the two hills of Safa and Marwa 7 times, until Allah guided her to a source of fresh water, the Zamzam well. Today, the act of running between these two hills during the pilgrimage symbolizes that very event. 10 years later, Allah commanded Ibrahim to sacrifice his son Ishmael as a test of his devotion. When Ibrahim hesitated, Allah instructed him to fulfill his will. On their way to the place of sacrifice, Satan tried to hinder them but was repelled by the stones they threw, an act that is the origin of the stoning ritual in the Hajj. In the end, Allah stopped Ibrahim and sent a ram to be sacrificed in Ishmael's place. This ritual of animal sacrifice, commemorated during the pilgrimage, symbolizes the unwavering loyalty and absolute obedience to Allah, exemplified by Ibrahim, a legacy known in the Quran as the Way of Ibrahim. In 632, the pilgrimage initiated by Muhammad is known as the Farewell Pilgrimage, for shortly after, he fell ill with a prolonged fever and passed away in 632 at the home of his wife Aisha. After his death, as he had not designated a successor, a bitter dispute arose over who should lead the Muslim community. At that time, Muslims controlled most of the cities on the Arabian Peninsula, while vast stretches of deserts and barren lands remained. Out of this vacuum, a nascent Arab polity began to form. The dispute over Muhammad's successor erupted between two factions, the Al-Bayt and the group that would later be known as the Sunnis. Ultimately, through election, the first four rightly guided caliphs succeeded in leading the Arab community from 632 to 661. During this period, Islam grew rapidly and served as the foundation for further conquests. The Muslim armies expanded their territories northward to Armenia, westward to Egypt, Libya, and Tripoli, and eastward to encompass nearly the entire former domain of the Sassanid Empire. After the era of the rightly guided caliphs, the Arab Empire continued to expand under the Umayyad and later the Abbasid dynasties. At its peak, the empire spanned 13.34 million kilometers, one of the largest empires in history, stretching from the Indus and Pamir in the east to the Bay of Biscay and the Atlantic in the west, and from the lower Tigris in the south to the Caspian Sea and beyond in the north. Under the leadership of Umar, the Islamic State launched unprecedented conquests. He divided the army into two, attacking the two great powers, the Byzantine and the Sassanid, simultaneously. By 642, the Arab forces had completely defeated the Sassanid Empire, marking the collapse of an empire that had lasted over 1,200 years. Meanwhile, in the west, another army advanced into Egypt, capturing Cairo and incorporating all of Egypt into the Islamic State. The rise of the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties. After this period, the Umayyad dynasty took over. However, only 2 years into his reign, Umar died of illness. Following Umar's death, another man, also the father-in-law of Muhammad, was elected as caliph, known as Hailing from the same tribe as Muhammad and one of the earliest Muslims, he was renowned for his military prowess and considered one of the two great aides of the Prophet, alongside Abu Bakr. During his reign, he prepared for a smooth transfer of power. After taking office, initiated an unprecedented conquest in Arab history. He divided his forces in two, simultaneously attacking the Byzantine and the Sassanid empires. By 642, the Arab armies had completely defeated the Sassanid Empire, marking the end of an empire that had existed for over 1,200 years, while in the west, another force advanced into Egypt, capturing Cairo and bringing the entire country under Islamic rule. However, Om's greatest achievement was the compilation of the Quran. He organized a group of scholars to collect and standardize all existing manuscripts into a single text that contained the basic doctrines, religious obligations, and ethical rules every Muslim should follow. Once completed, this version replaced all previous scattered records and became the sole holy scripture of Islam up to the present day. Yet during his reign, was also accused of abusing his power, appointing many members of the Ubayd clan to key government and military positions, many of whom had previously engaged in anti-Islamic activities and even killed Muslims. This led to fierce opposition from within the Islamic leadership. Furthermore, was accused of seizing vast amounts of land in Egypt and Syria and of building a personal power base in those regions. His policies and actions gave rise to a faction within the Muslim community, the Shia, who argued that only the direct descendants of Muhammad were entitled to the caliphate. In contrast, those who opposed this view, and who mainly supported and the non-descendant caliphs, became known as Sunnis. This split marked the beginning of the division of Islam into two major branches, Shia and Sunni, a conflict that has persisted throughout history and continues to this day. After Ali, the leader of the Shia faction, was elected as the next caliph in an effort to diminish the influence of the Umayyads in Medina, he moved the capital to Kufa in Iraq and appointed a new series of governors and military officials. Although this move was justified, it severely undermined the interests of the Arab aristocracy, especially the Umayyad clan. In the second year of Ali's reign, a member of the Umayyad family, Muawiyah, declared that he would not recognize Ali's authority, sparking a civil war. In 661, Ali was assassinated, and the nation plunged into chaos. The Shia in Kufa chose Hassan Ali's eldest son as the new caliph, while in Syria, Muawiyah also proclaimed himself caliph. Muawiyah, with his exceptional political acumen, used both conciliatory measures and military threats to force Hassan to abdicate. Unwilling to see Muslims torn apart by civil strife, Hassan ceded power to Muawiyah, thereby officially establishing the Umayyad dynasty with its capital in Damascus, which dominated much of Syria. Known for their distinctive white flag, the Umayyads' rise marked the end of the era of the four rightly guided caliphs and ushered in a new age. Internal turmoil persisted when Muawiyah passed power to his son, provoking strong opposition that led to the selection of Hussein Ali's son as the new caliph. However, Hussein was ambushed by Umayyad forces and martyred at Karbala. His death is commemorated annually by the Shia. At that time, the Umayyad Empire had become a gigantic superpower, stretching from the Indus and Pamir in the east to the Bay of Biscay and the Atlantic in the west, and from the lower Tigris in the south to the Caspian Sea and beyond in the north, encompassing parts of Asia, Africa, and Europe. During this period, the Umayyads classified the empire's inhabitants into four main tiers. The highest tier, Arabs who enjoyed privileges, wealth, and held the highest positions of power. The second tier, conquered peoples who had converted to Islam, the Mawali. They did not enjoy the same privileges as Arabs but were exempt from taxation. The third tier, non-Muslims living within the Umayyad Empire. They were not forced to convert, but had to pay a head tax and land tax, and were barred from holding important positions. The lowest tier, slaves, primarily prisoners of war, who endured heavy labor with no political status. In the later years of the Umayyad dynasty, some caliphs led lavish and extravagant lives, exploiting non-Muslims and slaves, which deeply agitated the Muslim community. By 747, a Persian from the second tier named Abu Muslim initiated a rebellion in eastern Persia under the slogan of tax reduction to rally the masses. This civil war, the Khorasan Rebellion, attracted participants from aristocrats, peasants, and slaves alike, and rapidly gained strength. Simultaneously, those who had never recognized Umayyad rule turned Kufa into a base and actively spread their message in regions like Iraq, Persia, and Egypt. Many disaffected Muslims began to support them. Among the opponents of the Umayyads, another powerful faction emerged, the Abbasids, led by Abu al-Abbas, a fourth-generation nephew of Muhammad. He asserted his belonging to the Hashemite lineage and accused the Umayyads of usurping the caliphate. He declared that the caliphate should rightfully belong to a member of Muhammad's family, proclaiming himself the savior of Islam. Although he was not a direct descendant, his distant familial connection earned him substantial support from those who believed that only Muhammad's bloodline could legitimately inherit the caliphate. With the backing of various discontented groups, the Abbasid faction became a formidable force, ready to challenge Umayyad rule. Rebel forces in Persia pledged allegiance to Abu al-Abbas, forming a key military force against the Umayyads. In 750, the rebels advanced swiftly, capturing numerous important cities and eventually seizing Damascus, the Umayyad capital. Soon after, the last Umayyad caliph, Marwan II, was captured and executed. Abu al-Abbas then overthrew the Umayyad dynasty, became the new caliph, and founded the Abbasid dynasty, the second era of the Arab Empire. Abu al-Abbas took pride in having annihilated the entire Umayyad clan, even proclaiming himself An, meaning of lowly origin, to reflect his austere style of rule. In the second year of his reign, the Arab army confronted the forces of China's Tang dynasty at the Talas River. In the Battle of Talas, the Tang forces were defeated, and many Chinese craftsmen, including those skilled in papermaking, a technology that had been forbidden for export, were captured. It was precisely because of this event that Chinese papermaking techniques were transmitted to the Islamic world and later to Europe. Abu al-Abbas ruled for only 4 years before succumbing to smallpox at just over 30 years old. His younger brother al-Mansur then ascended to the throne and became one of the most significant Abbasid caliphs. A stern and ruthless ruler, al-Mansur used every brutal measure to eliminate opposition, killing not only Abu Muslim, the leader of the Khorasan rebellion, but also brutally suppressing Shia groups that had once been his allies. He also sought to remove many officials in order to consolidate his power. Though he ruled with an iron fist, al-Mansur succeeded in stabilizing the empire's bureaucracy, ensuring prolonged peace and order. One of his greatest achievements was the construction of Baghdad in Iraq. Designed in concentric circles with an Islamic temple at its center surrounded by defensive walls, Baghdad was built with modern, lavish infrastructure and was ideally located near the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, becoming a major hub of trade between East and West. It soon developed into an international trade center, rivaling great capitals like Chang'an of the Tang dynasty, Constantinople of the Byzantines, and Cordoba of the Umayyads in Spain, the 4 foremost international cities of that era. Al-Mansur reigned for 20 years and died in 775 while on pilgrimage to Mecca. Thereafter, his descendants ushered in a golden age under caliphs Harun al-Rashid and al-Ma'mun. Under Harun al-Rashid, the Abbasid dynasty reached its military zenith. During his more than 20-year reign, he launched repeated attacks on the Byzantine capital, forcing the Byzantines to sign unfavorable treaties, even demanding that their emperor pay tribute to the Abbasid royal family, thereby demonstrating his supreme power. Under Caliph al-Ma'mun, the Abbasid Empire reached unparalleled heights in culture and scholarship. Al-Ma'mun was deeply passionate about science and culture. During his reign, he initiated a translation movement that spanned centuries, translating scholarly works from Greek, Latin, Persian, and Sanskrit into Arabic to absorb advanced knowledge from around the world. He also established a major research center in Baghdad called the House of Wisdom, Bait al-Hikmah, which collected and preserved thousands of cultural and scholarly texts and invited scholars from diverse nations, ethnicities, and religions to collaborate. Consequently, the Abbasid Empire thrived with a spirit of learning and experienced unprecedented cultural development. However, this golden age lasted only until al-Ma'mun's death in 833. Subsequently, his younger brother al-Mutasim ascended the throne, marking the beginning of the Abbasids' decline. Al-Mutasim's mother was a Turkish slave, and leveraging that connection, he recruited thousands of Turks to serve as his personal guard, protecting the palace. This politically motivated move, intended to bolster the dynasty's military power, eventually led the Turks to gain significant influence. As their power grew, they became arrogant and began to abuse their authority. To address the ensuing conflicts, in 836 Caliph al-Mutasim decided to move the capital from Baghdad to Samarra, abandoning the political foundation the Abbasids had maintained for nearly a century. However, in Samarra, with no force capable of countering the Turkish Guard, the Turks' power continued to rise. The Abbasid caliphs gradually became mere figureheads under the control of Turkish commanders, leading to their loss of authority and the successive declaration of independence by previously Arab-conquered regions. The Abbasid Empire slowly crumbled into a patchwork of independent states. The last Abbasid caliph established by al-Mutasim survived until 1055, when Turkish forces of the Seljuk dynasty captured him and established the Seljuk Empire. Under Seljuk rule, the caliph retained his role as the spiritual leader of Islam, a figurehead title without real political power. During this period, various regions of the empire gradually declared independence, and from Europe, the Crusades were launched, plunging the Seljuk Empire into internal strife and external invasions. In 1218, the Mongol armies under the command of the sons of Genghis Khan initiated their first invasion, leading to the collapse of the Seljuk Empire in 1251. During the third invasion, the Khan's grandson, Hulagu Khan, led the Mongol forces into Baghdad and carried out a blood-soaked massacre that claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of the city's inhabitants. The last caliph, al-Mutasim, was captured and executed, trampled to death by a horse on a carpet. This event marked the end of the Abbasid dynasty, which had endured for over 500 years, and the collapse of the Arab Empire. Although the Arab Empire fell, Islam endured and began to spread into East Asia. With the vast expanse of the Mongol Empire, Islam, a faith embraced by many peoples, continued to develop and blend with diverse cultures. From the mid-18th century onward, peoples in the Islamic world repeatedly waged struggles for national independence, and after World War II, Islamic nations gradually gained sovereignty, thereby shaping the modern Islamic world. Despite its many ups and downs throughout history, Islam remains one of the largest and most influential religions in the world, with over 1 billion followers across every continent. Islam is not only a spiritual faith, but also a wellspring of cultural inspiration, knowledge, and moral values for humanity. Having weathered countless trials from its formation in the Arabian Peninsula to its spread across the globe, Islam has proven its capacity for unity, perseverance, and adaptability. Today, Islam serves not only as a bridge between cultures, but also as an indispensable part of the diverse tapestry of humanity, continuing to spread the light of peace, compassion, and understanding across the world.